You and Marcus started the same week, same floor, same logistics company outside Columbus, same beige cubicle walls, same orientation packet, same slightly too cold air conditioning. He came in at $61,000 a year. You came in at $54,000. On paper, from the very first Monday, Marcus was already ahead. He still is, on paper. He makes more than you to this day, and you are going to retire roughly 15 years before he does, and neither one of you knows it yet because the difference was never really about the paycheck. Marcus got his first raise 8 months in, an extra $3,800 a year. He celebrated the way you'd expect someone to celebrate. Dinner out, a new watch he'd been eyeing. Nothing reckless, just a person enjoying the fact that the work was paying off. You got the same percentage raise around the same time. You didn't go to dinner. You opened your laptop that Saturday morning, pulled up your 401k enrollment page, which you'd bookmarked and never touched, and increased your contribution by 2%. Then you set up an automatic transfer, $110 every payday, into a Roth IRA sitting in a low-cost index fund. It took 11 minutes. Nobody saw you do it. Nobody was ever going to see you do it. Marcus mentioned casually in the break room that he'd started looking at a slightly bigger apartment. Not extravagant, just an extra bedroom, a little closer to downtown, maybe $200 more a month. You nodded. You said that sounded nice. You did not mention that your own rent hadn't changed in 3 years, that you were still in the same one bedroom you'd signed the lease on the week you started, because the math on staying put had never stopped making sense to you. By year 2, Marcus had the bigger apartment and a car he'd financed instead of the one he'd been driving since college. 61 months, $440 a month. You still drove the same car, a 10-year-old Civic with cloth seats that had gone slightly gray, paid off, costing you nothing except gas and the occasional oil change. At the company holiday party, someone asked Marcus about the car. He talked about it for a while, the trim package, the financing terms he'd negotiated down. Nobody asked you about yours. Nobody ever did. What nobody could see, because there was nothing to see, was that your 401k contribution had been running for 2 years without interruption, and your Roth IRA transfer had cleared $110 every single payday, rain or shine, raise or no raise, and the balance had crossed $9,000 sometime around month 19, though you couldn't tell you the exact date because you weren't checking it obsessively. You were letting it run. Your accountant is named Deborah. You didn't hire an accountant because you needed one for anything complicated. You hired her 3 years in because you'd started picking up freelance contract work on weekends, small logistics consulting gigs that paid in the low 4 figures per project, work you never mentioned at the office because it had nothing to do with anyone there. Deborah does your quarterly numbers. The first time she saw your combined picture, the 401k, the Roth, the freelance income, the total, she went quiet for a second and then asked what your base salary was. You told her 54, now 62 after raises. She looked at the number again and said, "You know most people your age with this kind of trajectory are making double that in salary alone." You told her you knew. She asked why you hadn't pushed harder for a promotion. You told her the promotion track at your company meant more hours and more travel, and you'd rather keep your evenings than chase a title. She didn't argue with that. She just made a note and moved on to the next section. Marcus got that promotion, the one you'd been offered and quietly declined. Regional coordinator, $11,000 more a year, 40% more travel. He took it. He deserved it. He'd worked for it. And you were happy for him, genuinely. The kind of happy that doesn't have an asterisk on it. The raise absorbed the way raises tend to absorb. A slightly nicer car for the extra driving. A dog walker for the days he was on the road. None of it wasteful, none of it a mistake. Just a life expanding to comfortably fill the room the money created for it. Your freelance income, meanwhile, had grown into something that no longer fit the word side. You were pulling in an extra $18,000 a year from consulting work you did almost entirely from your kitchen table on Saturday mornings, work nobody at your actual job knew existed, work that went straight into a taxable brokerage account the same week it landed, automated, unglamorous, completely invisible to everyone around you. There's a guy in Marcus's new department, Todd, who talks about his investment strategy the way some people talk about their fantasy football roster. Loud, specific, delivered to whoever's standing closest at the coffee machine. Options plays, a friend's real estate syndication he's got money parked in, a rare sneaker collection he insists is appreciating faster than the S&P. Marcus mentioned Todd to you once, half amused, half impressed. You asked what you were supposed to be doing instead. You told him honestly. 2 accounts, 1 contribution rate, and not checking either of them more than once a month. He laughed like you were being modest. You weren't being modest. That was genuinely the entire strategy. The stress test came in April, 8 years in, when the company announced a restructuring. 2 departments merged, positions cut. Marcus's role survived, technically, but folded into a bigger territory with worse hours and a boss he didn't respect. Yours was eliminated outright, along with 6 others on your floor. You both stood in the parking lot afterward holding identical cardboard boxes, and for the first time in 8 years, the gap between your 2 financial lives became the only thing that mattered. Marcus needed the next paycheck. He had the truck payment, the apartment, a wedding to help pay for in the fall. He took the first offer that came in, 11% less than what he'd been making, at a company he'd never heard of 2 weeks earlier. He told you it was temporary. It might be. He didn't have room to find out. You had 11 months of expenses sitting quietly across 2 accounts nobody at the company had ever known you funded. You turned down the first 2 offers that came your way. One because the role had no real growth path. One because something about the interview left you uneasy in a way you'd learned to trust. The job you eventually took paid 12% more than the one you'd lost, at a company with better hours and, as it turned out, a 401k match nearly double what you'd had before. Your accountant Deborah ran your numbers again at the end of that year. The freelance income, the 2 accounts, the emergency fund that had absorbed 8 months of a job search without you ever touching a credit card. She looked at the total for a long moment, then looked up and said the same thing she'd said years earlier, but this time it landed differently. At this pace, she said, you're on track to be financially independent by 51. Marcus is on track for 66, maybe later given the restructuring. 15 years. Neither of you had planned for that gap to exist. Nobody engineered it. Nobody sabotaged anyone. Nobody made a single reckless decision along the way. It was just 11 minutes a month, spent quietly for 8 years, while a truck payment and a bigger apartment and a rare sneaker conversation at the coffee machine happened in plain sight the entire time. You still see Marcus sometimes. He's doing fine, genuinely fine, happy in a way that has nothing to do with a spreadsheet. You've never told him the 15-year number. You're not sure you ever will. Some gaps are better left as something only you can see, growing quietly, 11 minutes at a time, long after everyone else has stopped watching.